Hey, what is up, everybody? Welcome to the Guilty as Charged podcast. My name is Steven, and I am the host. Super excited to be here today with you guys talking about our safest prospects of the 2025 NFL Draft. Very interested to see who we come up with today. But this is a nice juxtaposition from our previous show where we talked about the riskiest prospects. I know there were certain people who were not huge fans of our work on that episode, but as is that show usually, but I think it's obviously worth talking about. So we will do the more positive side of this coin today with the safest prospects. And to do that, of course, is my guy, Tyler. Tyler, what's up, man? How you doing tonight?
Very excited to be getting into the safer prospects and just start to dive more into like how we feel about these players specifically. We'll get into all the weeds of it and the thick of it and all that the next month or so as the draft approaches. But we've been talking so much about free agency and like general class vibes. We've done some mock drafts, but now it's like we're trying to put like how we feel about these players out there. And these aren't our favorite players today. These aren't the best players necessarily today, but just guys that check a lot of boxes that are safe bets at different spots in the draft.
Yeah, I tried to keep this mostly, players that the Chargers could be kind of in range of, mostly on day one and day two. We're not really going to talk like Ashton Ditty is awesome, and I don't think anybody really doubts that. So, I was looking at running back numbers trying to find who I wanted to talk about today. And like I knew this number, right? But then I went back and saw that Ashton Jeanty forced 125 missed tackles this past season, just in the regular season. That doesn't count the playoff game, which is by far the most in the PFF era. So Ashton Jeanty pretty safe. Like last year, I don't think we really included Brock Bowers in this kind of conversation. No. So we're not really talking about that kind of player. So we're trying to find some places of value, some players where these guys can have really nice careers and stay in the league for a long time.
Yes. And we have, I think, 10 or 11 players. I promise you there are more players than that. If we don't mention your favorite player, great. Like, let us know in the comments. Let us know in the chat. We're just trying to get a different sampling here. Honestly, thinking about it, it could have been 10 defensive tackles just in every round. And that could be in the show. Yeah. But we have to try to spice it up a little bit here.
Yeah, and there is a player on here that was on our riskiest show, which we'll get into. But I had to talk about him in this particular way. There are other guys, again, that we like. Dylan Cole says, better be seeing Mitchell Evans here. Don't care about the ACL tear. I probably am higher on Mitchell Evans than almost anybody on social media. But he is not going to be on this show. Like the ACL tear does make him a little less safe than some of these other players. So, Cam Scadaboo, again, favorite player for a lot of people. I think that depends on your version of safe. He's a guy who was in college for 6 years and has a ton of carries on his body. Didn't test great. So if we don't touch on your favorite players, it's probably for a reason. But definitely let us know what your thoughts are on who you consider to be safe. And we will definitely be more than willing to engage in those conversations.
Absolutely.
All right, let's get started here. Again, these are not our favorite players. We'll talk about some of them in our opinions, but these guys are going to check multiple boxes in different ways, and some of them might be favorites, but we'll get to that obviously in a second here. So I'm going to kick us off here with Colston Loveland, and I'm going to talk a little bit out of the sides of both my mouth because he was on our risky show. He does have a shoulder injury that you definitely have to take into consideration. The coaches at Michigan, according to Bruce Feldman, really believed that his shoulder injury did impact his ability to make an impact as a blocker. He doesn't have any testing results, because of the shoulder surgery. He was at the combine in a sling, but I truly do not care. I think his film grade is so high that I don't really care that he doesn't have testing, that he's dealing with a shoulder injury. And I know that the numbers are not like eye-popping. Obviously, the numbers were a lot better in 2023. Still, the production is very, very solid. 82 targets, 56 receptions, 582 yards, 5 touchdowns in 10 games in probably the worst offense in the Big Ten with the worst quarterback situation in the Big Ten. It just was not a fun time to go back and watch that offense every single week, which got progressively worse, I would say. 5.2 yards per catch per reception, or excuse me, yards after the catch per reception, which is 24th in this class. I think there's a little, again, that has to do a lot more with the offense, I think, in putting in those kinds of situations. 2.67 yards per route run, which was third in the class, 31 first downs created, seventh most. And I saw on Benjamin Solak's article that he was actually second in first downs per route run. Or excuse me, not Benjamin Solak. That was Nate Tice today. Nate Tice had a great article on Colston Loveland and Tyler Warren that he mentioned. And then really great numbers in yards per route run versus man, really solid numbers versus yards per route zone. To me, you guys listening that have been listening for a long time know how much I love Dalton Kincaid for a good reason. His signature is on my wall in front of me. He's one of my favorite Utah players of all time. This is like if you stuck a jetpack on Dalton Kincaid, this is what you get with Colston Loveland. And he's also 2 inches taller and about 25 pounds heavier. So he's more built for the NFL than Dalton Kincaid was. In each of the last 2 seasons, he runs about 20% of his routes out wide as like a true X receiver. And he can actually run routes against outside cornerbacks who follow him and create mismatches. I think this is one of the biggest mismatch weapons that I have graded at the tight end position since doing this. I had a very tremendously high grade on Brock Bowers, and I had a very tremendously high grade on Kyle Pitts. Colston Loveland, if we had all of the testing data, I think would be right up on par with that. I think right now I would have him a little slight tick behind those two guys, I should say. But his ability to create separation at any point of any route, find the soft zones in zone, his ability to turn and run, come back to the football. He just checks so many boxes for what I think a pass catcher in the NFL needs. He's very quarterback friendly. He has a lot of the attributes that Ladd McConkey has, where he will create extra yards seemingly out of, very minimal spaces. Like he really has such a knack to get there. So I think if he had tested, he would be a safely above average athlete. I don't think he would be an elite athlete, but I think it would be pretty close. So Colston Loveland's film to me checks so many boxes that I just have such a high opinion of, that I think his floor is so tremendously high. I mean, Trey McBride just got paid $19 million per year today. And I think Colston Loveland's tape stacks up at a significantly higher level than that does. So I think the chances that Colston Loveland does not hit are very, very low, unless he goes to like a horrible situation, obviously, and injuries and things like that. But if you get him to a good situation, I think this is going to be one of the best tight ends in the league in a very short time.
Yeah, I believe as of right now, he's the player I've watched the most games of. Obvious reasons, Chargers picking Michigan, you know it.
Yeah.
I have him at 7 games, which isn't a ton, but I went back to 2023, obviously, and then 2024.
Yeah.
And there's just everything on tape as a receiving option that you would want. And I think he's by far and away the best route runner of the tight ends in this class. I like Tyler Warren as an overall prospect more, but in terms of pure route running, Loveland, I think is by far and away the better option. They're like beating man coverage. And there's so much, especially in this class. And maybe that's why I don't like the class as much, because I watched Colston Loveland, because he's winning against man coverage. He's settling into zones perfect. Like just his knack for getting open or not breaking stride when there's a horrible ball thrown over the middle, but not breaking stride, somehow getting it, and then still getting 30 more yards after. Just fantastic. The hang up for so many fans is him as a blocker. And while I understand that he's not like a Will Dissly, for example, as a block, like that is not going to be his role. You draft him understanding that. But there's this whole discussion about like he sucks at blocking, or he doesn't block, or he can't block.
No.
Like he was 19 years old and Jim Harbaugh said, you get 23 run blocking snaps against Alabama. Go. And they won that game because he was doing pretty well in that regard. Again, not that he's a great blocker, but he can get it done. He can absolutely get it done as a blocker.
Yeah.
Some people show a lot of like the move blocking stuff, like, see, Loveland's a good blocker. Like that's different than what we're kind of trying to talk about here. Yes, that's great. That's a bonus. Leading on a sweep or some sort of screen, whatever, that's all great. But even as an inline guy, like he can definitely contribute, I think, as much as, say, a McBride, as you said, but the ceiling as a receiver is far, far higher. I liked McBride quite a bit. I would have Loveland well ahead of him. So I think that it's tricky to call him safe after we just called him a risky prospect, but that's the injury. That's kind of the lack of, whatever happened this past year, because Michigan was something else on offense.
Yeah.
But I do believe that you can do enough with him that you will be able to find a role for him, and he will be able to stay on the field. And at worst, he's going to be a very good receiving option.
Yeah, the blocking stuff to me is very much more nuanced than that. And people talk about Tyler Warren as if he's like this incredibly well-rounded blocker, and I think he has the flashes to do that. But Tyler Warren has a lot of technique issues as well. He's by no means a perfect blocker. Can he become a much better blocker? Yes, there are a couple of clips that I think I screen recorded at some point where he's like blocking guys out of bounds. Like he has the potential to be a dominant blocker, but he's also 10 pounds heavier than Colston Loveland is. But if you actually sit and watch Colston Loveland's blocking tape, he can do the inline stuff. He can set the edge. He can handle duo blocks. He can handle combo blocks. Like he can do all the things you want him to do in line. Is he going to look like super impressive? Is he going to, run people over? No, but I think he can do a good enough job of walling people off. I think he can do a good enough job of staying in front of people. That's also like not what you're drafting him for. So He doesn't need to be hidden like that. That is the best way that I would describe that. Like there are other move tight ends who are going to be pass catchers who, when it comes to blocking, you're going to have to hide them. You're going to have to get them in motion, give them a runway. Elijah Arroyo is like that. His blocking tape where he has a runway is fantastic, and I think he can excel in that role. Colston Loveland can be in line and block. I don't think he should be your main blocker. I do think obviously you would love to have like Will Dissly with him, for example. But he can be on the front side in line and block. I think there are several games, particularly at the end of this past season, where he really showed that he was making a lot of progress there. The 2023 blocking tape it's not great, but he reportedly put on like 12, 15 pounds in between 2023 and 2024. And that's a big reason why he was able to start making that progress there. So, and Tom points out, he would have Will Dissly right there. He has a really solid tight end coach in Andy Bischoff potentially with the Chargers. So I would be very confident with him that he would become a very effective blocker. Is he going to be a George Kittle dominant type ever? Probably not. But can he be solid and reliable as a blocker? Yes, I think absolutely that is in the cards for him.
Out of curiosity, is he on here over Warren because you feel he's safer, or because Warren's just out of reach and not really a...
I do consider him safer than Tyler Warren. I think Tyler Warren has to go to a very creative offensive coordinator, or he's not going to be the same kind of bang for your buck when it comes to where you are drafting him. I think Colston Loveland is a bit more scheme proof because what he does translates to any scheme. I think if you're not handing the football to Tyler Warren 2 to 5 times a game, you're probably not going to get the same kind of value that you think you are going to get out of a top 10 pick. So if you're the offensive coordinator for the Raiders, for example, Chip Kelly is not afraid to do those kind of things. He has Brock Bowers, so I would expect Brock Bowers to get those kind of targets. Ben Johnson, same kind of thing. But if he goes to an offensive coordinator who we're just going to draft Tyler Warren, he's going to be our Y tight end, I think that's going to be a big mistake for how they can view him. And Tyler Warren is 2 years older than Colston Loveland and was a 5th-year breakout, as opposed to Colston Loveland, who was playing meaningful snaps for Michigan right away. So I also have Tyler Warren graded higher because I think the explosive play potential there is just insanely high. But I do think there is a chance that Tyler Warren goes to a poor situation and does not hit like Colston Loveland does.
Yeah, I'm going to just keep my tight end one because Ben Johnson will draft him and make me right. So that's all, make it work.
And then that's going to be like, that's perfect for him. Like that's the same kind of stuff, man. Like jet sweeps for him, handoffs. Like he can be a traditional Y tight end, but also you want him to be kind of like a gadget player. Like that really is his role, where you're trying to get him high value.
Yeah.
Shane Steichen, I don't know, man. Dylan Cole asking about him. I think my opinions of Shane Steichen have that Colts offense last year was horrendous to watch. And granted, quarterback play definitely limited things, but I think his play calling experience from the Eagles is greatly inflating his potential value as a play caller, in my opinion.
Yeah.
The Colts offense has not been great.
No, not great at there at all. All right. Next up is, not to move on, but got to
go ahead.
I have Derek Harmon, the interior defensive lineman from Oregon. I had started watching interior defensive linemen early because the Chargers just felt like they were going to go there. Heard this was a great class. And there were some names I watched that were like top 30, 40, 50 names at the time. I remember thinking, no, like Deion Walker, people forget, was like a top 40 option.
Dude, he was being talked about in the summer as like a top 15 pick.
Yeah. And I was like, no, there's no way. And I remember watching, I forget who else I watched and thinking, there's no way. And then there was Derek Harmon. And it took about 4 snaps, I felt like, for me to go, yep, that's him. That's the guy. I love watching him. So he did not test all the way through. So he doesn't have an official RAS. But he did run a 4.95 40 at 6'4", 313, has 34.375 inch arms. Reportedly, and at his previous stops, has held 20 to 30 more pounds. Couldn't find an exact number there, but he's played like full on nose. And we discussed him last time, and Steven mentioned like what he's able to do as a nose and carry that weight in that role. That elevates his floor. That just shows that like you could be that guy, do that guy, and then for him to then drop weight and be the best pass rushing defensive tackle in the country, arguably, is really, really impressive. So statistically, just this past year, 3rd in pass rush productivity, 4th in win rate. I don't think there were I don't think he has like Pierce's like 10 pressure 3 sack game against Alabama or whatever it is. But going up against the better offensive lineman, which is a big test for me, like how are you against the best? And it's always 3-4 pressures, 3-4 run stops, forced fumbles, some tackles for losses, etc. Like he's always maintained production against the better teams. I think his film is really solid. And frankly, if he were slightly able to finish more plays and probably just play the position at his weight longer, this guy's going a lot earlier than the discussion. We started cover. I think we mock drafted him in the 2nd round and got like a B- for him.
I think it was like a D, dude.
Yeah, because we took this guy who's in like really far down really early. Yeah. And now I think obviously like, there people have kind of caught up to him. I just think that his floor is tremendously high. The fact that he's as good of a rusher, as athletic of a rusher as he is at 313 is ridiculous. And I'd be very much so in favor taking him at 22.
Yeah, I like how we are starting this with players who could be options for the Chargers at 22. And, Jim Harbaugh mentioned that it was going to leave a bruise, the fact that he left or that Poona Ford left in free agency. And yeah, same here. Jim would have loved to have that back. But I think they very easily could pivot to finding, a potential replacement in terms of impact in the draft here. And I mentioned this a couple episodes ago, but EJ Sanders was at the Oregon Pro Day and just got rave reviews. EJ Sanders from the Bootleg podcast, for those who don't know, rave reviews about Derek Harmon's leadership and his ability to walk into Oregon as a transfer and just be the guy right away. And the Oregon defense has dudes, man, like Jamari Caldwell is going to get drafted. Jordan Burch is going to get drafted. They have a corner who could get drafted. They like it's a great defense. They have dudes on offense as well who are going to get drafted. So just his ability to come in right away and take on a new role, lose that weight, and then produce at the level that he did produce, I think is very, very impressive for him as a person. I do think like his lack of finishing plays is potentially a factor of like him not being used to that kind of role.
Yeah.
Like I did go back and watch some of the Michigan State stuff, and the Michigan State runs a 3-3-5, and he has to 2-gap all the time at Michigan State. and he was playing as a true nose tackle, as Thomas Martinez pointed out to us. So I went back and watched, and his two-gapping tape is really good. Like when he was heavier, he was able to do that as well. So I think that plus the potential that he flashed as a pass rusher this last year and produced as a pass rusher this year make him incredibly safe. Again, defensive tackle is a very difficult position to adjust to in the NFL. It generally takes guys some time. So I don't know if I would say this is like instant star, but I think the chances that Derek Harmon like is a bad player are very, very low.
Yeah, I have him and Walter Nolan very, very close. I understand if anybody likes Nolan more, completely get it. But the general consistency, I like a lot more. I generally do like the safer options, and Harmon to me just feels like a safer option.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think his floor is much higher than Nolan. Nolan is like just all potential, and the athletic traits there are insanely high, but his production is not great. Like if you watch his best games, you see the flashes and you're like, okay, I get it. But the down to down production for Derek Harmon as a run defender, as a pass rusher is just much higher.
Yeah.
All right, we'll get to my next one here. Tate Ratledge from Georgia, the interior offensive lineman. So I've talked a lot about him on this show. I hear on other podcasts that like every fan base wants Tate Ratledge. So I feel like the universe loves Tate Ratledge. And I think for a good reason. His billing heading into the combine was like, oh, like he's your typical like Georgia offensive lineman. Like he's probably not going to test all that great. Joke's on you. He's the number one offensive lineman in the class in RAS, in obviously the interior offensive line and number one guard. He would be the best center as well if you change the position there. So the dude tested like an absolute freak in every single regard. He's got great size, great everything about his frame as an offensive lineman. He was a 3-year starter at Georgia. He had a 99.1 pass blocking efficiency rating across his career. Very, very good. His worst season was 98.7. Like his numbers are fantastic. He increased his run blocking grade every single season of his career. From 63.2 3 years ago to 71.9 to 74.7. So shows you the progression there. I did forget about his tightrope surgery that he had. He only missed 4 games with it, and he's very healthy, at this point in time. So I think that is behind him, but it is worth mentioning here. So if we had put him in the last show, I would have understood, but honestly, it forgot my mind until today. So he did miss that. But to me, this is the best run blocking guard in the class, in my opinion. I know Tyler Booker is kind of holding that mantle publicly, but when it comes to his versatility in gap and his versatility in zone, I don't think anybody can truly match that. Like he creates just as good a movement as Tyler Booker does, and he can actually reach those landmarks in zone. Like his athleticism absolutely pops on tape. He is able to do things as a run blocker that very few other guards in this class are. Extremely well-rounded. As a pass protector, I think he has extremely quick feet. I think he has strong hands. I think he consistently shows the ability to anchor and recover. You can get on him quickly. Like I think he is somebody who, if he's not on his timing every single snap, a defensive tackle like Walter Nolan did give him a little bit of trouble there. But he was almost always right there to recover. So if he does get beat, I think he can match well enough where he can recover. This is a guy who I think is still being talked about as like a 3rd or 4th round draft pick. And to me, this is somebody who should be a 2nd round pick. This is a guy who I have a top 50 grade on. He checks the athletic traits. He checks the film traits. He checks big program 3-year starter traits. He was the backup center every single season he was at Georgia. There's so much to like about his background, so much to like about his film, so much to like about his athleticism, that this is a very safe offensive lineman to me. I think he can come in and play any position on the interior and be a quality starter for whoever drafts him. So it's funny, like I hear all these people talking about him, like, oh, like let's just get Tate Ratledge in the 4th round. I think you should take Tate Ratledge at 55 and consider doing that if you want him. I don't think he is going to last until the 3rd round.
Yeah, I was not really excuse me, paying too much attention to Ratledge, but you think you would, given what you just listed here. I don't know anything about him. Thomas Martinez mentions he tore his ACL in 22, injured 2 years prior, had tightrope surgery in 2024. But film is film and film is film. And to go with that, okay, so all these injuries, and it's significant, and that's why he will not be a first rounder or maybe even a second rounder. But to then have that athleticism and that the statistics, and I'll take your word for it, the film there, you at least feel good. Let's even frame it this way. If you're going to bet on someone who maybe has an injury history, that is the safest bet you could make, because when he's on the field, he's phenomenal and he tests through the roof. So if you're going to bet on anybody, which if he's a third round pick, yeah, you're kind of making those bets at that point anyway. Sure. That's who you bet on.
Yeah, to be fair to me, I did not know that about the ACL that Thomas Martinez brought up.
I didn't either, but Thomas Martinez knows everything.
That's why Thomas Martinez is so good, and that's why everybody should follow him. So, the film is so good. I think he does so many things that the Chargers like to do and ask of their guards that, he could easily play there. So, most of the bulk of his snaps did come at right guard, but he said at the combine, or it might have been, I think it was at the combine, that he was their backup center all 3 years that he played. So he does have positional versatility. And I would be more than confident in him switching over to the left guard spot.
Yeah. So I will definitely have to give him a watch. Bummer about the injury history, but not everybody at this point in the draft, in the third or even late second, is a perfectly clean player.
Sure.
Okay. I will not get. This is probably the last time I'll be able to talk about Barron, because at this, he's gone. He's not going to go to the Chargers anymore. It was really, really cool, but I had to mention him because he just, again, another safest prospects, right? Every year there's somebody who checks all these boxes, but some of these guys, whether it is Branch or Lassiter, they don't check that athleticism box, and Barron does. Not that he's a hyper, 100th percentile, top ever athlete, but 88th percentile for one of these tweener DBs, or not the premium first guy off the board DBs, is very, very good. And ultimately, he allowed 33 yards in 3 college football playoff games. When it mattered, he allowed 33 yards. And I think that I liked watching him anyway, but as soon as I started to note that on 3rd and 4th down, he just was assigned to Colston Loveland and erased him. Granted, offense wasn't great, not a lot going for him anyway, but he just shut down Colston Loveland. We just talked about how much we like Colston Loveland. And he didn't allow anything on 3rd or 4th down. And just, it feels so rare to see a player just be assigned to another player in college. See it all the time. We talk about it with the Patriots used to do it, or as Pat Surtain following McConkey this week. I don't really often see a DB just line up against the tight end or line up against this receiver or whatever.
Certainly not against the tight end.
No, right. And just take them out like that. And it's wild to watch him play, because it's a Where's Waldo, because you can watch him play the entire game in the slot and then play an entire game on the outside, or switch between that and some safety in the slot. It's wow, whatever Texas needed him to do, he did it. Yeah, great. I don't remember if his numbers in terms of missed tackle rate is great, but him as a tackler, he'll smack players, no problem. And I've heard that several teams they think his character is through the roof.
Yeah,
which now leads me he's gone. This player is gone. I'm really bummed, but checks the athleticism box, great tape, has been assigned to take out the best players and did. The numbers are good. He tackles, and apparently he's a freaking great guy. So I hope he goes to a team that I don't mind cheering for. I hope he doesn't go to a team that I hate. And I wish him all the best, because I think he's awesome. He won't be there at 22 anymore.
Yeah, I think that dream is probably dead. It was funny when people were like, I don't think he's a good athlete. What are you watching? I don't understand. I love his tape as a blitzer as well. It didn't happen a ton, but he just plays. So he plays corner as if he were Cam Chancellor. He just wants to hit everybody, and I love that. I love corners who do that. There's another one coming up here in a second. So Jahdae Barron, I think you get him with a creative defensive coordinator, and he would have so much fun with him. Jesse Minter getting to coach Jahdae Barron, it's not going to happen, but Jesse Minter would love Jahdae Barron. Brian Flores, same kind of thing. I would absolutely hate to see Spags get his hands on Jahdae Barron, but that's like probably the perfect fit for him. So this is, I think this checks every box possible. Like, is he, does he have the length that you would love for your outside corner? No, but I think he overcompensates in every other area where he can do that.
Yeah.
And there's just not a ton of outside corners who press a lot anymore. Like, it's just become kind of a position where you play a lot of zone, you play a lot of match coverage, and if you can press, great. Like, the teams will use that, but it's not as necessary as it used to be. So I think Jahdae Barron is like the perfect modern day corner.
Yeah.
So
awesome.
yeah, I agree. Hopefully he goes somewhere fun.
Yes.
Okay, my next one here is Mr. Damien Martinez. By now, you probably have heard me talk about him several times. Not the highest of high-end athletes, 81st percentile. He ran a 4.51, so he's plenty fast enough, but he's not the most explosively agile kind of guy. His shuttle and 3-cone scores are below average, but he did test above average in pretty much every other category. Statistically speaking, you have 145 attempts this past season at Miami, 827 yards, 5.7 yards per attempt, 3.99 yards after contact per attempt, 34 missed tackles forced, 21 runs of 10 plus yards, 53 first downs created this past season. And then he had over 2,000 yards rushing at Oregon State in a completely different scheme, which I think is very important to note. And I did here in the film notes, but he wasn't given like the workload of a true like college workhorse this past season. But I just think that was the factor of Miami had to score 45 points every single game because their defense was atrocious. And so they had to throw the ball a lot, and they have the future number 1 overall pick at quarterback. So not necessarily a bad decision there, but we had a few players previously, which I feel kind of bad about Tate Ratledge now. But Damien Martinez never missed a game in his career. He played in every single game at Oregon State and Miami that he could have possibly played in, and that includes as a true freshman. He's very scheme versatile. You watch his zone running tape from this past season at Oregon State, and Oregon State runs like a very like Shanahan-esque offense, where they did previously under I forget their head coach's name. He's now Michigan State's head coach. Anyways, their scheme was a lot of outside zone. The scheme at Miami is a lot of inside zone and gap and power and counter and things like that. That is where Mario Cristobal has kind of made his bread and butter as a coach. And Damien Martinez can execute in either fashion because I think he's got really high level contact balance. He's got leg drive for days. Like, this man does not go down on first contact, and I love that about him. And I think my favorite thing that I always look for in running backs, like the very first thing, is like, what happens when your situation goes to shit? Like, are you able to turn negative plays into 4 yards? Are you able to turn, 2-yard gains into 8 yards? Are you able to create first downs in those situations? And those kind of running backs, I think, have a very safe floor in the NFL. And that is Damien Martinez to a T. He doesn't have like the home run speed all the time. He does get caught from behind a little bit here, but he is so consistently able to squeeze out of areas that he should not be able to squeeze out of. And I think he just is always fighting and fighting and fighting for those extra yards, and he does a great job in those situations. He's not a super productive pass catcher, but I think he has really solid pass protection tape. Not a ton of opportunities there at Oregon State, but this past season at Miami, they kept it in at, in third down situations in the backfield to pass protect quite often. And I think he's very good in that regard. Mark Matlock pointed out the James Conner comparison in the chat here. I think that's apt. I think this is a guy who just will consistently hit what you will give him, and then he will also create after contact. So
yeah,
I'm a huge fan of Damien Martinez. I have him as a mid-second round grade, which is really kind of like a third round selection. There are several other running backs who are a lot faster and who have a lot more fumbles that people like in the chat. But Damien Martinez is somebody you will take, and he will consistently give you 800, 900 yards in the chat or in the NFL, and he'll have a very, very nice career.
Yeah, I love this. He has a closer's mentality. That's definitely true.
Yeah.
That one walk-off essentially a walk-off touchdown where it's like me versus 7 players and I'm going to win and score from 25 out or whatever, or 40 out. Insane run. His tape is awesome. I, like you, I'm still not 100% sure why he's not ranked higher. I understand why he's not a top 3 guy.
Sure.
Because, some guys have more traits. They are faster, whatever. But this is an episode about safest players. And Martinez was someone, if you didn't add him to the list, I would have. Because I completely agree with you on all fronts with him. He's awesome. I really like that James Conner comparison. I don't know if the body types are the same. Didn't watch Conner in college, so I don't know. But I watched Conner basically like force the Chargers to lose because he couldn't be stopped. And as good as Jesse Minter is, and I think as well coached as the defense was, there was no stopping Conner that day. Martinez is that kind of guy. So there are definitely some players. I think when fans evaluate running backs, they look for the really, really big guys, 6'3", big, well, I don't know, Gus Edwards, right? Like guys like that. And they think that is the big bodied back. That is the bruiser. But there's being like a bigger player and there's just playing like a physical player. And that's Damien Martinez for sure. He's the latter.
So James Conner was taller. James Conner is 6'1". Damien Martinez is 5'11 and a half. James Conner is also 233 pounds at the combine, at least. And Damien Martinez was 217. So a little bit of a different body type. I didn't realize that James Conner was that tall. Damien Martinez ran 4.51. Conner ran 4.65. Martinez is a better athlete from a testing perspective, but Conner is definitely bigger in that regard. So I think stylistically is more so what you're going for there. But I the closer mentality part is so true. Like he is going to make you feel his presence in the run game. And I think that's, the Chargers, I think, probably do need a little bit more juice to compare or to complement Najee Harris. But if they just wanted to get 2 guys who are just always going to be giving you those 4 or 5 yards per carry and go with Najee Harris and Damien Martinez, I think it would not be the worst thing in the world. So I think his style is perfect for the Chargers. And I don't know if Najee Harris's 1-year contract is like stopping me from taking someone like Damien Martinez.
No, I definitely don't think so. I would understand if they went and got Martinez. It won't stop us from mock drafting him. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, I agree there. Big fan.
Yes.
Thomas Martinez points out that some people have questioned his pass protection ability. I don't. I think his pass protection is consistently in the right spot. I think he makes good decisions. I think he sees things. I think he has the physicality to do that. Are there some whiffs? Sure. That's every running back. He's not Travion Henderson good, but he is very good.
Yeah. I'm trying to find his pass blocking efficiency in this class. Let's see. Martinez, still 12th in PBE out of the 30 that I have ranked. It's even by like his own class. He's one of the top 12.
He's solid, I think, in pass protection. I wouldn't say he's like awesome, but I think he's solid.
Yeah. Alrighty. I'll go with another running. This could have been a lot of running backs, to be completely honest.
There's so many running backs that are good, man.
So many running backs that I feel are just very well rounded and safe. But I ended up going with Hampton here, of course, because he is a very safe option in my opinion, and that's why he's probably going in the first round. But he's a 98th percentile athlete. In our per play stats, he's second. He's top 10 in every rushing and receiving category. He had 2,003 all-purpose yards, and he's one of only 2 running backs to have over 300 receiving yards, average over 4 yards after contact per attempt, and force more than 50 missed tackles. The other one being Cam Scadaboo. And some of that is definitely like just volume, right? The 300 receiving yards, that's volume. Missed tackles forced, that's volume. But then you're also a post-contact guy. So just they leaned on him a ton, and he was very efficient. Again, number 2 in the per play stats. So raw numbers, totals, he's there. Per play, he's there. Athletic testing, he's there. I think he's a great runner. I think he remains very, very square, and I think he very much so runs in a way that throws off the timing and the angles of the tacklers, and he gets far more over expectation than I think the blocking was there. So I think Hampton's awesome. People mention, who is it? Robert mentions like DJ Giddens. I wanted to put him on here. I think Henderson, you could put him on here. There's so many guys that have several different things that they can do, but ultimately, like other than Genty, of course, the best combination of film, numbers, RAS, that's Hampton to me.
Yeah, I thought one of us was going to put RJ Harvey on this, to be honest, as well. Like
If he were 5'10", he would have been on here.
Yeah.
I just worry about the safe, like how safe is a 5'8" running back,
Sure.
who I love.
Yeah.
Trust me, if this is a favorites episode, he's the thumbnail. But it's not. I think Hampton's obviously safer anyway. But I did very much so consider Harvey.
Yeah, there's a lot of running backs in this class that I think you consider safe. I haven't watched Kyle Monangai, the running back from Rutgers, but I heard this on the NFL Stock Exchange that he never fumbled in his career. And
Good.
that is like a tremendous value for this particular class. And that's going to make him stand out on day 3 when you're getting to these other ranges where there are other like faster, smaller running backs who have fumbled like 9 times in their career. 0 fumbles, and he's like legitimately carrying the offense for 3 years at Rutgers. That will help him a lot. That is pretty safe. I just haven't gotten to him yet, and I don't know if I'm going to get to him, but I would love to have that chance. So Hampton's great, man. I think the first thing that really stood out to me was his ability as a receiver. Like him and Henderson just have such an ability where like as soon as they catch it, they just turn upfield and they just explode after they get the ball. So he's someone who can run different routes too. Like he can run an angle route, he can run whip routes, he can run wheel routes. Like he's legitimately like a good route runner for a running back. And so I think that only elevates his potential safeness as well. If the Chargers draft him, hopefully they remember that they can throw to running backs. That'd be great.
No.
What are your some people have said he is better in zone schemes versus gap schemes. Do you have any thoughts there about like scheme fit?
No, because I remember I just went through my notes and I think there were several gap or up the middle or just kind of having to crunch it plays where he was phenomenal. Could he be better in zone? Maybe, but I think that's partially just seeing the big plays and going, oh, zone, like he'll run outside and woo, zone.
Yeah.
But I think he's really fine in either. Again, sure. I understand why you lean that way, but I don't have any feelings of one or the other.
Gabriel Caldera brought this up, and I'm glad that he did because Hampton gets a lot of Joe Mixon comps, and I hate it. I cannot stand it. To me, he reminds me a lot of what the Rams had in Todd Gurley. Like when Todd Gurley was at his best and was just able to create so many mismatches as a pass catcher, the explosiveness as a runner, the vision, the ability to just like never stop your feet, the size. I'm glad that Gabriel brought this up. I was hoping one of us would get the chance to do this, but he reminds me a lot of Todd Gurley. So shout out to Gabriel there. I think that's a very apt comparison. To me, the Joe Mixon stuff is just like, I do not understand. Joe Mixon is very much like a point and shoot runner. Like he's never had good vision. He's never had good, like true contact balance. Like he's just fast. And I do not understand why Omarion Hampton has that kind of reputation.
Yeah. I don't know if their bodies are the same maybe or something, but I don't.
Athletically, they're pretty similar. Like they both had, tremendous jumps and short shuttles and things like that. But stylistically, I don't understand that comp at all.
Yeah, I was Charger 4.52. They just wear 28.
Sure, that could also be it. I threw out the Jonathan Stewart thing as well for him. Different Carolina team, different style, but he reminded me of him as well. So I think he's got the size and explosiveness that's pretty rare in the NFL. I think he's going to be a tremendous player, and I would definitely consider taking him at pick 22 for the Chargers. Next one here is Azareye'h Thomas. I think that's how I read that for the cornerback from Florida State. If you've been listening to this show for a long time, you know that I am a sucker for cornerbacks who are above 6 feet and will tackle and love to do that. And Mr. Thomas here does definitely like to tackle quite a bit here. He's not the best athlete in the world. Right now he's got an RAS of 8.17. We do not have vertical jumps or a 3-cone scores for him just quite yet. So maybe that could go lower. He did run a 4.58, I believe, was his pro day score. Dane Brugler said it was like in the range of like 4.56, 4.60, but on the RAS website, it's reported as 4.58 for what it's worth. He only allowed 8.3 yards per reception this past season, which is objectively absurd for an outside corner in college football, and a 50.2 passer rating when he was targeted. So he was very difficult to, move the football on as an outside corner. He had an 18% forcing completion percentage. He had 8 run stops, which is one thing that I love about him, which is tied for 12th in the class. And 24 tackles against the run, which was 3rd. So he is very willing to come up in the run game and make tackles, and he is very good at that regard as well. He has 17 career passes defended and 2 career interceptions. So the interception production isn't great. The athleticism isn't great. So this is why you're talking about probably like a round 2 player. There was a little time there where people thought maybe he could flirt into round 1 territory. But as it pertains to safe, I think you look at a lot of the other round 2 potential corners, and there's just a lot more questions, right? Like we like Benjamin Morrison, but there's the hip injuries that we talked about on Tuesday. Savon Ravel has the ACL injury. He's kind of going in that day 2 range. Maxwell Hairston, who we talked about on Tuesday, he's going in that kind of range. I don't really like the film of Maxwell Hairston personally, and the numbers are not great. You mentioned Darian Porter. Like, the film from this past season is great, but you're talking about a 24-year-old rookie potentially at corner, and he's never really played the position. So there's just a lot of question marks in this kind of range for day 2 corners. And when I think you look at Thomas, you look at a guy who's big, he can press, he can tackle, he in zone coverages, he has great instincts on the boundaries, he can play the football. Are there some athleticism concerns? Is he a little stiff? Yes, but I think those pale into comparison of the questions of the other potential day 2 corners. So, cornerback has become, again, it's changed so much. Like, there's so many teams playing zone and too high. It's the responsibilities are so different than what they were a couple, a decade ago, let's say. But I think there are a lot of positives with Thomas that you could get very, very good play out of him. Maybe he's not like an elite prospect. I don't think he is. But this is a guy who I think could be, like the 12th best corner in the league, and that wouldn't necessarily shock me.
Yeah, that's 12th best sounds pretty good to me. Obviously, the Chargers very familiar with Thomas. Thomas was a multi-year starter there, not just like a one.
He was a 1-year starter, so he played sparingly the first 2 years, but this past season was his first like true starter. Okay. So they had Jarian Jones and the other guy, I forget his name,
John Reed, I think.
What'd you say?
No, Renardo Green.
Green. There we go. Yeah. Those 2 guys both were drafted pretty highly. Like, I think Green was a 2nd round pick, if I'm not mistaken. So this is a guy who didn't have a ton of responsibility the first 2 years, but this past year, his film was fantastic. His numbers are very good. So I think this is a day 2 corner bet worth betting on.
Yeah. I'll go with another corner here real quick. I know we probably have to do a commercial break. It's up. Oh, wait, no, I have my corner next. I have CJ West, completely opposite than a corner. Where the heck do I have my corner? He's later on. Never mind. I don't know what's going on with CJ West, because I don't know if he's going to go in the 2nd round or the 5th round at this point. Because when I first watched him, it was like, oh, here's this guy at 151 and 160 or whatever. I'm about to sneeze. Do you have nice things to say about him? Because I'm going to sneeze.
Yeah, I think. Wow, 3 sneezes. Bless you. Is there a 4th? Bless you.
What in the heck? Oh my gosh.
It is allergy season.
Yeah, it's allergy season. Anyway, I really like CJ West. I don't know if I'm going to like him as much as the media is now pushing him to like him. And if we take him and go to our PFF mock simulators and we can't get him in round 3, he sometimes goes before the Chargers pick. So I don't know if I now like him less than the consensus or whatnot, but I do very much so like him as a safe player. At minimum, he's a guy who's number 3 in run stop rate. I think the Bootleg Football guys just posted a video of him and called him a sentient piece of granite or something like that. And that's kind of him. What I think really stands out to me is the motor. I think he's one of the guys that has, especially at his quote unquote weight, some of the most like yellow highlighted Harbaugh type plays, Harbaugh guy plays. for me, just chasing down screens. There's a lot of, they're not
Yeah.
exact body types, but there's a lot of Poona Ford when I watch him. And a lot of, look, my only comparisons to anybody is Chargers players. I don't know the rest of the league as well. I didn't watch film for a long time, but watching like kind of an undersized guy, he has shorter arms than Ford. I believe he's taller for sure. Most people are taller than Poona Ford.
Poona Ford's like 0 percentile height.
Yeah. But the way I think he wins with leverage sometimes, it reminds me of Poona Ford. And I wish that he could have learned under Poona Ford, but it's okay.
Yeah.
So I think at minimum, you get a high motor player, a good run defender. I think the film was overall very solid. But then there's the flashes. And sometimes the flashes like, geez Louise. I mean, the first play or second like pass rush he has against Michigan, he just bowls over the guard and slams him into the quarterback. It's like, whoa, where did that come from the run stopping nose tackle guy? So again, could put a million different defensive tackle, nose tackle guys on this list. But I think at minimum, you're getting yourself a good, athletic, high motor run defender who then can add some of the pass rush stuff as he goes.
Yeah, I really loved his ability to win the leverage battle. And Poona Ford is very good like that. Like Jason Kelsey was on the Part of My Take podcast, and like they asked him about guys who gave him challenges, and Poona Ford was one of the guys he mentioned because he's just able to get on you faster, and then he's able to get under you. There was a couple like forklift refs as a pass rusher that like really popped that I watched from CJ West. He's able to win with quickness. He's able to win with leverage. He just is somebody I think can be really scrappy and rugged on your defensive line. So high second or late second round is probably a little rich for me, just given like he is going to have some games where it's just not going to go right. And Poona Ford was awesome, right? But there were some games where the guards were able to just do a much better job against him. But leverage is always the most important thing, right? If you can't win the leverage battle, you're not going to survive on the interior. And CJ West continually wins those battles more than a lot of other guys in this particular range. So I'm a big fan of his. Not as like you. I don't see like the second round hype, especially in this particular defensive. Like most years, CJ West is probably like defensive tackle number 2 on my board. In this class, unfortunately, there's just like 10 guys I would say that I think that I would have ahead of him. But he's still very good, and I think he does have a high floor just because of the leverage factor. Like he's able to win that battle so much, so frequently.
Yeah, I'm looking. I have so many players to go. He's like, top 60 player for me right now. He will be pushed further because I have not watched a lot of the earlier guys, but he's a good player.
Yeah, he is. We're 53 minutes in here. I have to do a quick little ad read about Prize Picks. It's just classic us. We have a few more guys to go, but Prize Picks, as we have talked about previously on this show, the best and easiest way to consume daily fantasy sports, NBA, Major League Baseball, whatever you are into, without the void of watching football. Although if Roger Goodell has his way, football season will be starting much earlier and be going a few weeks longer. So we'll see what happens when the NFL gets to 18 games. But in the meantime, Prize Picks will kind of fill a space in your life that has been missing without the Chargers, and hopefully also fill it with some money signs and some dollar bills as well. So Prize Picks truly is the best and easiest way to consume daily fantasy sports. It is extremely user-friendly. All you have to go is pick a group of players in whatever sport you are watching and choose more or less on some stats that you think these players can get out on. And then there you go, set your lineup, and that's all she wrote. So prizepicks.com/guilty, code guilty at checkout. Again, for prizepicks.com/guilty, code guilty at checkout. All right, let's get back into it. This is JT Tuimoloau, the edge rusher from Ohio State. I wanted to include an edge rusher in here. And similarly to Azareye'h Thomas, I think this is a debate of like the other question marks at his position from his peers. And I don't think he is going to be for everybody, but I think he does have a very high floor in this kind of space. So his RAS is 9.33. He does not have a 40 time currently, so that could change. I don't expect him to be a super 4-5 kind of edge rusher type of guy. I do think he is a good athlete, but I don't think he is 9.33. But that's what it is right now. His jumps are really doing a lot of the heavy lifting there. He jumped very high. I think it was like 39 inches and over 10 feet in the broad jump. So very good explosive jumper. The numbers are not going to be eye-popping. He had 38 pressures, 11 sacks, and 12 hits in the regular season. I did not include postseason numbers there, where he was a little bit more productive for what it's worth. He had a 12.0 pass rush productivity rating and 16.3 pass rush win rate versus true pass sets, which again are one-on-one opportunities. Where he is going to shine, if this profile makes you think of Tuli, it is very similar profiles here. He had the 5th highest run defense grade of any edge rusher in this class. 23 tackles against the run, 17 run stops. Very productive, very aggressive, physical run defender at the edge rusher position. And we have talked about durability for the Chargers. We've talked about the TED there every day. He started every single game for the Buckeyes across the last 3 seasons. He did not miss any time. I know he played through a couple different nagging injuries, but he was there every day playing for the Buckeyes and making an impact. So I think that does matter when you are comparing him to some of these edge rushers who were playing 20 to 25 snaps a game, who, were not getting a ton of true run defense snaps. When you're talking about all of these guys who are kind of getting a shorter end of the stick in terms of playing time, JT was out there playing 65, 70 to 75 snaps every single game for the Buckeyes, defending the run, setting the edge, and I think a lot of that matters for him. So he's got great size and length. His arms are 33 inches. He's 6'5". Like, he's a big guy. So that is a little bit different where he is from Tuli. Tuli's a little bit smaller, with smaller arms, but JT definitely has the size and the length there. And I think his bread and butter is power, and specifically like speed to power off of that. Like, that's what he wants to build everything out of, and his hand usage is fantastic. So he is one of the few edge rushers in this group that will use multiple options from a counter perspective. There's a cross chop, there's a spin in particular. That's how he wants to win. He wants to win speed with power, but he will use other moves off of that. Again, I talked about him as a run defender. And then a little thing that matters a lot to me, after watching Puna Ford, frankly, is like, how do guys respond to screens and jet sweeps and the designer touches that offenses create? And JT was continually in the right spot at the right time against designer touches. So he is definitely somebody who has a very high football IQ. He defends the run. He can be an effective pass rusher. Is he going to be, a consistently 10 sack guy? Probably not. But I think with his run defense, if he gives you 7 to 10 sacks a year, that's great. A very high end number 2, similarly to how Tuli is as well. But I think that does elevate his floor with the rest of the peers around him.
So it seems like he can do a lot. I've not watched him. Obviously some Tuli comparisons here with how he plays. No, it's not a race thing, RJS, but whatever. I guess you somehow get Wi-Fi from the basement.
My sisters are Polynesian, dumbass.
Anyway, because of the similarities, would he be someone you'd be intrigued the Chargers to take in the second round, or do you feel it's, because I know you've kind of, and we've maybe preferred bendier, like speedier type, and in the second round, are you kind of just looking like just for who's good and who works?
I think I want a bendier, speedier type because of who the Chargers have. But because Khalil is on a 1-year deal and Bud Dupree is a free agent next year, I'm not opposed to them adding like another power rusher by any means. I think having Tuli and JT for the next little bit here is definitely not something I would be opposed to. So my preference is probably a speedier rusher. Like, if they can get Donovan Azareye'h or Kyle Kennard or Josiah Stewart, Damon Rucker, Quandarius Robinson, those guys are in that speed rush, type of role. That's where I would prefer. Yeah. But this edge rusher room is not going to stop me from just like adding more talent into the space.
Yeah, the really good call out here from Trevor Scott with Azareye'h. Someone, if you told me like, hey, which edge rusher should be on here, it might have been him, but I wouldn't have put him on there if I didn't see what he weighed in at the combine. If you would ask me like, is he a safe player? No, okay. Yeah. If it's safe for a guy who will always be a good like designated pass rusher and can definitely rush the passer, like I think you consider him safe. But given the body weight, as the way, at least on how he played and how he played, like how the film, where the weight showed up on film or the lack of weight showed up on film, I wouldn't have called him safe. But if I were to do it now after the weigh-in, I feel better. So he would have been an option I would have considered.
Yeah, I think safe also includes like draft status, and Azareye'h's kind of like flirting with like top 15 kind of hype. Like the edge rusher class is really difficult to sort through. You know, Mike Green obviously has like the character stuff. We talked about Shamar Stewart and Michael Williams, how they don't check like the production boxes a lot of people look for. So somebody like Donovan Azareye'h, a lot of people do like and think he checks more boxes than those guys. You know, so he is kind of flirting with like top 15 territory. I'm a little uncomfortable with like how he plays the run as it pertains to being safe. I do think, like you mentioned, if we're talking specifically for a role, you know, as a third edge rusher, then he would be safe. But when you take an edge rusher in the top 15, top 20, like that's your guy. Like you're taking him to be a number one. And I don't know if I really see that with Azareye'h, even though I do really like him and I would understand it if the Chargers took him at 22.
Yeah, I could understand at 22, especially with other options gone. But yeah, some of the hype is pretty high. I think he will end up settling into the late 20s or like 20 to 30 range than early.
Yeah, I think like 20 to 35 is good for him. I you know, he's probably depending on how the board shakes out in the 20s with like the receiver battle situation.
Yeah.
He's somebody who should go in like that 25 to 35 range for me.
Yeah. All right. I will stop here at Trey Amos. I had another player, but I've already talked myself out of him.
Oh no.
It was purely for the numbers, and frankly, we're out of time. I will go with Trey Amos here, the corner from Ole Miss. I really, really like Amos quite a bit. Kamari Lassiter, I just checked. Kamari Lassiter was one of my guys last year, and that'll be Trey Amos for me this year.
Yeah.
Kamari Lassiter was an absolute like unit as a tackler.
Yeah.
Kill people.
As you saw in person.
As I got to see in person, as I spent good money to see all my priors confirmed in person, including Quentin Johnston's priors. Anyway, that was a whole fun day for me. Oh, and Stingley, really good day for me. Yeah. Anyway, Trey Amos. I obviously started with 2023 back with Alabama. Like, okay, like I've tried to watch at least 2 games per player from the previous season, especially if they were a different team. And unfortunately, and part of the reason I believe he switched to Ole Miss is that if when I watch film, I put like timestamps for everything. And for both the LSU and the Georgia games that I watched, he doesn't walk in until 19 minutes into like the 40-minute film, or at least he's not like routinely involved there. And of course, like he goes to Ole Miss and like he finds his full-time starting role, and then now he's going to go at least in the second round. But in those moments, he against Georgia, who had, you know, some good players the previous year, and against LSU, who had some pretty good players the previous year, he allowed 0 catches on 3 targets and had 3 passes broken up. And against LSU in particular, I thought he ate up everything those receivers were trying to throw at him. And again, this is the previous years, I guess, 2023's LSU. Good players.
One of the best receiving duos we've ever seen.
Yeah, those guys and some more guys that'll get drafted this year. Held his own, obviously did not allow a single catch, and was routinely like pointing out where the ball was going to go while in coverage, and like just not bailing from assignment, but peeling off from his assignment to pick off Nussmeier on one occasion. Just a smart player, I think, in terms of the boundary use. I think he allowed he forced the receiver out more times than anybody I've seen so far. The boundary use is perfect. Yeah. There's a pass breakup 1-on-1 against Brock Bowers in the end zone. In that Georgia game at Ole Miss, I think all those things just carried over. So I love watching him. He's number 5 in per play stats overall. He's first in forced incompletions, fourth in forced incompletion rate. So the raw numbers are there. The per play stats are there. I think the film is very, very, very good. He's a high IQ player. That's why he gets those forced incompletions. Yeah. That's why he gets those interceptions, because he's baiting these guys, or he's able to break off and make those breakups. So I like him quite a bit. I like him enough where currently, now granted, I have not watched a ton of the earlier guys, but like I have him over Walter Nolan and Emeka Egbuka and Omarion Hampton. And these guys. Like I like Amos a lot.
Yeah.
And there's just always that corner who's the fringe second round guy who I end up loving. And it was Lassiter, and unfortunate for what happened Kyrie Jackson last year. That's Amos for me this year.
Yeah, you mentioning the baiting part. I love how he consistently, gets guys to do what he wants, He's the best zone corner in this class, I think. And that includes Travis Hunter for me, who I think is like a better like overall, better
Sure.
corner. But when it comes to zone instincts, Trey Amos, I think is right there, with some of the best zone work we've seen. You mentioning the boundary work, it's fantastic. This cornerback class is kind of, dubbed as like a poor cornerback class, and there are some question marks for sure.
Yes.
But I think if you're counting Travis Hunter as a corner, which I think he should play corner. I know he's probably going to play receiver because like the money, but I think he should play corner. So if you count Travis Hunter, and then you have Will Johnson, you have Jahdae Barron, you have Trey Amos, you have Benjamin Morrison, you have these guys, Savon Ravel, who all think I think could be first round kind of talents. I think this cornerback class is pretty good. I don't think it's deep. Like, it definitely falls off, but I like this cornerback class a lot. We've highlighted a few of them on tonight's show, but Trey Amos is just so smooth and so smart. And I think his instincts, his ball skills will all translate to being a very effective player in the NFL.
Yeah, I think so. So I very much so like him. I think Damian Parsons said he had a first round grade on him. And I was like, oh, okay. Like I almost felt like I don't know. Amos has always been like the second round guy. I always felt like I was just like by myself. I'm liking Amos more than most, but okay, Parsons ahead of me, fine.
So an option for 22 for you?
Probably. So like doesn't include like Loveland or Warren or Grant, like those guys, of course. But if it's Amos or Hampton, yeah, I'm taking the corner.
All right. There we go. For those who were wondering here, the player that Tyler was going to mention was TJ Sanders. So we're not gonna do
very
that.
Good per play stats. I like him. We both like him.
Yeah.
But cut for time. I do want to add one thing though.
Yeah, go ahead.
We didn't put a receiver on this list.
Yes, we did not.
Kind of how I feel about the class, to be honest.
I think you could classify Emeka Egbuka as safe.
That would have been it.
I thought about putting him on here, but I just I don't know. I didn't feel like great about it. And I did want to get to like defensive guys. Like when I first started this, I was like, the offensive guys were all the ones that I was going to talk about. And I was like, well, I kind of need to do some defensive players. So I think Emeka Egbuka would be the choice here for safe.
Yeah, not even close. He would have been easily the safest bet for me over Golden. I would have put him on here, honestly, if the per play stats were better overall this past season. But like, it doesn't matter. Like, I love Egbuka quite a bit. The film was great. The blocking is great.
Yes.
And like, I don't know. Like, I don't know if he's McConkey, but like watching him, there's so much McConkey, and that worked, obviously. So it's like, do that again. And so I would understand having him on here. I genuinely almost did.
If they take a receiver at 22, Egbuka is probably my choice. Like I know he played a lot in the slot, but I think he can actually play in the Z. And I just can imagine Jim Harbaugh watching his blocking tape and being like, I need that guy. Like him and Elik Ayumino are probably the two best blockers in the class, but Egbuka, like, there are reps where Ohio State used him as like a lead fullback, and he is leading up into the hole and blocking a linebacker. Like his run blocking tape is truly outstanding. I think he runs enough deep vertical routes where he can play the Z, and he ran fairly well. Like I think he was like a 4.45 if I'm not mistaken. Let me make sure that really quickly actually before we.
It was solid. He's like an 80 something percentile guy.
If RAS will load. Yeah, so he's got the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8th highest RAS score in the class. So he's got a 9.72 total RAS. He ran 4.48. So like he's plenty athletic.
Yeah, thought about him in a roundabout weird way. If you're doing a day 3 dart throw, you watched him, Elijah Badger.
Yeah,
with
I like
great
Badger a lot.
hands and contested catch rate. Like if you're gonna take a flyer, find that guy who catches everything.
Yeah,
can't think of
we did an hour and 5 minutes on 12 guys.
something like
12.
that.
So if we had kept going, we could probably create a 2-hour podcast out of this, but the line has to be drawn somewhere.
Yeah. Our favorite 45 defensive tackles will be the next episode.
Yeah.
And I would have fun with that.
I considered Jalen Royals, but the testing's not like great, and the per play numbers, there's also the injury from this past year. But I do think Jalen Rose is pretty safe. I think Trey Harris could be classified as safe as well.
Thought about it.
But yeah, I just think there's more safe value in defensive tackle, corner, and tight end, running back. So
yeah. Thought about Higgins, couldn't justify the reception perception profile, but I thought good athlete, great contested catches. I think a good possession receiver that does feel safe too.
Yeah. So some options, but not ones that we love to put on here. All right, we'll get to some super chats before we head out for today. Crescendo wants to know, is Greg Roman able to build a Super Bowl caliber offense without a running quarterback? He's never seemed to have an elite offenses without one. Can we dummy proof him with talent, or is his passing scheme bad?
Can you dummy proof him with talent? I suppose so. They haven't done it yet. So far, they're looking to dummy proof, and that has not happened. I don't think he's a dummy, by the way. I understand what you're saying, though. Can he build a Super Bowl caliber offense without a running quarterback? Obviously, Herbert can run, but then so many injuries over the last few years. I don't know how willing they are to let him do that over and over again. Now that he's gotten hurt by running, I don't think he's been hurt by running other than the finger on a scramble, or at least trying to evade a sack.
The finger was after an interception. He was trying to
is that what it was?
Tackle somebody, and his hand got caught in Max Crosby's face mask.
Nice.
Because of course.
Sure. Can we have an elite offense? I don't know. I think they can have a Super Bowl caliber offense in the sense that they can get him to top 10, and that can be enough to win a Super Bowl. But can it carry them, and can they put up 45 in the Super Bowl? No.
Yeah, I don't think the Chargers are really ever going to be that top 3 scoring offense, with this particular group. Can they be a Super Bowl winning offense? I think so, but I think the Chargers, without the threat of a 800 to 1,000 yard rushing quarterback, are going to have to make some concessions elsewhere that the Ravens and the 49ers failed to do on offense, where instead of having one high-end running back, they probably need to get a second as well. They probably always need to have 2 good running backs. Where the Ravens, it was a lot of there was a year that with Greg Roman where Deontay Foreman after the Falcons was their leading rusher. And there was another year where Latavius Murray was their leading rusher. That kind of stuff can't happen. You can get away with a bad running back room when you have Lamar Jackson or Colin Kaepernick or Tyrod Taylor. With Justin, you probably do need to have a great running back room, and we might see them try that out this year. Cristiano back with another one. He says, why not Tate in the second? I think he should be considered. But I also think that the Chargers, they probably need to get a weapon in the first 2 rounds, and then probably a defensive tackle in the other round.
Yeah, you and I have pretty consistently gone 3rd round earliest, but mostly 3rd, 4th, 5th for O-line, and sounds about right.
Yeah, there are other good options that I like, but Tate to me should be a 2nd round player. But I get why some people don't have him that way. Enemy Town says, yo, I'm late. My son decided it's SmackDown night. Well, hopefully things are going well. He wants to know what we know about the international pathways tight end the Chargers sign. And also, there's no way Andre isn't our center bolt up, he says.
Don't know anything about that tight end other than what you could have read today. Wish him all the best. Hope it works out. The fan base will overhype him and freak out over him, just like Okoye. Nothing against him. It's just, there's the realism of what's going on here and him trying to make the roster. Granted, I think he's tight end 4 right now. Maybe tight end 5 with McCastles.
Yeah, McCallan Castles is technically on the roster as well. So
yeah. So I don't know. No way Andre isn't our center. I don't know, man. I'm not so sure.
I think Andre James should be the center. But listening to Jim Harbaugh talk about Zion playing center, man, I don't know. I'm very conflicted about what they're going to do. I truly do not. I could see it going any possible way, and some of it's going to depend who they can get in the draft. Like if there's a guard prospect that they love that falls to them at pick 55, I could see them taking that player.
Mm-hmm.
And then Zion, like, yeah, he probably is your center. So I don't know. It depends on the draft. I think they will draft a potential left guard. But we'll see. I think Zion is probably going to be starting in some capacity.
Yep.
Dark Samus, I'm shocked that he did not come to us with a Jared Wilson super chat. I really appreciate this though.
Yeah.
The difference questions here. He says he wants to know if we would sign George Karlaftis if he is a free agent in 2026 or 2027 if he does not have his 5th-year option picked up.
I imagine that he would get it picked up. He's been very consistent. I think he's what kind of we thought he'd be as a prospect, like very good player, consistent player. I think he's had like, I'm going to be wrong. Watch. I thought he's had like 50 pressures last couple of seasons. What I signed him in 2026, 2027, he probably gets a 5th-year option, I would imagine. So 2027.
Holy shit.
What?
Dude, he had 83 pressures and 15 sacks last year.
Including the playoffs?
Oh, yes, including the playoffs. Yes.
Okay. But still.
64-11 in the regular season in 2023. 61 pressures and 8 sacks in 2024 regular season.
It's pretty good. It's better than I thought.
Good. That is much better than I thought it would be. Because
yeah.
he's never really like stood out against the Chargers.
No.
And it's not like the Chargers' right tackle play has been like amazing until this year. But Joe Alt like completely put him in hell. Like that was one of the first games where I was like, okay, Joe's like for real.
Yeah. So sure. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know who else is going to be in free agent at that time, but if he does hit free agency, I think he's probably going to be a little too pricey for them, just because the Ravens never really spent like high end market on edge rushers. Like it was always a lot of like the mercenary pass rusher types. So I think this is really projecting things a little bit here, but I believe they will draft an edge rusher this year, and next year, if Khalil wants to come back, I think he is back. I think that is like they love Khalil too much for that. So you could have Khalil, Tuli, the rookie you take this year going into his 2nd year next year. I don't know if they will need to sign somebody like George Karlaftis. You know, I think they'll figure out ways to kind of piece it together like the Ravens always have.
Yeah, gonna be a heck of a group. I mean, we'll see who gets the 5th year and who doesn't. But Walker, that was the class with the insane edge rusher group. Walker, Hutchinson, Thibodeau, Jermaine
Johnson.
Am I in the wrong class? No, Karlaftis. Then I actually never watched Logan Hall. Epiketti. Boye Mafe is going to get paid.
Yeah, he's been good. He's been really good for Seattle.
Yeah. Nick Benito.
Broncos fans are like on the fence about him.
I'll take him.
Yeah, I know.
It's like all pro consideration. So stupid.
Yeah.
Well, because Rashawn Slater took him to school.
Yeah. Nicholas Pachilli says that he believes in Darius Davis as a wide receiver. What about you?
Sorry, my dog barked at the door because someone rang the doorbell. Love when that happens. Do I believe in him as a receiver? No. I believe in him in his specific small role that is really cool and contributes occasionally. But as a receiver, I don't. And so far, through 2 different coordinators, Chargers haven't either.
Yeah. I believe he should be involved more. Like when everybody was healthy, he was not playing at all. I would like to see him get some jet sweeps and reverses and screens, stuff like that. But I don't think he's ever going to be a full-time wide receiver. You know, it's just he's got a very specific role type of ceiling that he can play. So
Yeah.
I believe he should be more involved than he was, but I do not think he is a full-time wide receiver.
Well, now he'll be the touchback guy getting the ball at the 35.
Yeah, man. Very interesting. The NFL went from hating kickoffs to let's get more kickoffs very quickly.
Yeah.
Gruder, could you see them drafting Mike Green at 22? Sorry, I'm late. It wouldn't shock me, but traditionally speaking, the Chargers have shied away from drafting players, or at least early, with this kind of background. Like they're a team that has traditionally valued character a lot. And the one time they did it in the first round, it was probably their worst first round pick ever with Jerry Tillery. So
yeah, and this is worse.
And this is much worse. Jerry Tillery was just like not a good vibe.
Bad vibes, yeah.
But Mike Green has like actual concerning things in his background.
Yeah. Yep.
Which sucks because his film is so much fun.
Yeah, it was like the next day where I found out he had issues. I was like,
yes. Dre says Harmon, Loveland, Pierce Jr. or bust. I think you should take Pierce Jr. off that list personally, but Harmon and Loveland definitely I think are in this category.
Yeah, would love to love Pierce, but he's got his own issues, as we've said many times. His edge rusher group is
a lot of questions.
Yeah.
When I first started watching the edge rusher group, I was like, this class is awesome. And now it's like character concern, character concern, character concern, character concern. Has 4 sacks in his career.
Yeah, exactly. Can I interest you in character concerns and no quarterback hits?
Yeah.
It's like, sure, I guess.
Frustrating. There are some late pass rushers that I like quite a bit, but
yeah.
K Rich, thank you for the super chat. I will not be repeating that question though.
Oh, that's good. I saw it earlier and I was really, really curious if you were going to read that one or not. Is it Derek Cox's brother?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah,
definitely.
What a signing.
What a signing. All right, Tyler. Any other thoughts before we head out?
That was a nice show talking about some safe prospects that we liked. We got to be positive. I know sometimes it's like, we're so negative, or today we've been called racist, but today was a nice positive overall vibe.
Yeah, it was a good vibe. Dylan says, glad as teachers you didn't fall for that. Yeah, Tyler works with middle schoolers, so he probably sees that joke quite a lot.
I think I made that joke. the other live stream, that was my joke. Bend over.
It's true. It's true. You did.
I am a child.
And that part never truly leaves you.
No, it doesn't. It'll keep me young forever. When I have kids, hey, that's gonna be even worse.
Yeah, the dad jokes are ready to rock.
Yeah, it's my number one talent, I think.
We have security guards on our campus, and our security guard and I have become pretty close. Like we've gone to see movies and stuff together. He has a stack like of dad jokes, and it's just like you rip a card off, and that's your dad joke of the day. And so he always reads dad jokes of the day with me, and I always really appreciate it.
Yeah, I like that. It's fun.
K-Rich says worth a try. Hey man, we will gladly take the super chats. We really appreciate it.
Yes, for $20, I will read it. No, I'm just kidding.
No, definitely not. All right, you guys, that is going to do it for us today. We are going to be live on Saturday this week as well. A little bit of a different, like we will touch on questions, but we're like running out of time before the draft, so we're gonna have like another show on Saturday, and should be good. And then the schedule next week and going forward is definitely going to be different. So Brooke and I are leaving for the UK on Tuesday. So we will be on a plane at the usual time of recording. So we're going to record on Monday, and then Tyler and I are going to have a couple pre-recorded videos for you guys to drop after that. And then the week after that, Tyler's going to be live with somebody else. We'll figure it out, but it will not be me. And then I will be back the Saturday, the 18th for our normal Saturday show. And then we are right into the draft. So should be a lot of fun.
Yep. All the time in the world, yet no time at all.
Yeah. March and April has been so, I know April just started, but March was like probably one of the more chaotic months of my life. I was swamped at work the last month or so, and also trying to like cram in draft prospects and things like that. So I am very much ready for a vacation, and I'm very much ready for the draft with you guys. So it should be a lot of fun.
Yep.
All right, guys, that's going to do it for us tonight on the Guilty as Charged podcast. We'll see you Saturday. As always, bolt up.